Let's talk about an article I wrote today. Top 10 best value bargain free agent signings so far in 2024. And here are the names on the cutting room floor: Jack Flaherty, Luis Severino, Tommy Pham. Cutting room floor. Those are my honorable mentions. The reason why I didn't have Flaherty or Severino on this list is because they're 1-year deals. Flaherty 14 mil, Severino 13 mil. They're both pitching great right now, but you could see either sliding back a little bit and ultimately end up being about fair value. $14 million is not nothing. And they were sort of considered overpays in this offseason. They have hit. They've been great. And for both of those teams, if they sell at the deadline, they could become super valuable because you might turn that half a season of great production into maybe a top 100 prospect. And that's all of a sudden a huge win. But they don't crack my list.
And I would also say, even if you didn't trade someone like Jack Flaherty, if the Tigers can stick around 500 and be in that conversation, if he continues to be a stud, you hold on to him, you give him a qualifying offer for 21 million or whatever. We just talked about him maybe getting $100 million in free agency this offseason. Boom, you're getting a compensation pick right there. You're basically getting that first rounder. So Flaherty will be an interesting one where I could see him slowly moving up that list, as because it's all about, if you don't get the qualifying offer, then it kind of makes it moot, right? Or it doesn't become that trade chip. So a lot of that is situational, but he's the one I could see moving up into that list over the months if you continue to update it. But I thought you did a fantastic job on this article, because as we're going to get into, the contracts are a real key piece to that value, not just, hey, the best players that were signed in the offseason. It was, no, how much did the team have to put out there for it? How much risk was there? But how much reward have they gotten back? And so this is a wonderful list.
Thank you on that for sure. And looking at Tommy Pham as an honorable mention, it leads right into the list because I had to make a decision. Do I put Tommy Pham, who's clearly a better hitter, or do I take Ahmed Rosario? And again, it's value. So Tommy Pham, $3 million, $1.5 million in incentives. Ahmed Rosario, just $1.5 million to go to play for the Rays this year. And the reason why I ultimately gave Ahmed the nod, and it's not just because he's a former Met, he is hitting 278. I know hits aren't a big deal, but when you're watching a team, like, hits do still matter. The guys that are getting some knocks for you, he's third most on the Rays right now in hits. He's played right field, shortstop, third base, and second base. So super utility guy that's hitting about 280 for you on $1.5 million contract. To me, that just is a little more valuable than Tommy Pham's getting paid twice as much for a bad team. Maybe I'm giving Ahmed a little bit more of a bump because he's playing on a better team and he's bringing more value for a team where it matters more, but that's where I fell on that decision.
No, that's a great call, because if you're looking at wins above replacement, Rosario is also going to get knocked defensively. But as you pointed out, he's playing all around the diamond. He's playing outfield really full time for the first time in his career, after doing a little bit of it last year. So yeah, he's been value, right? That value part of the most valuable player. He's been doing that all around for the Rays, and I think that's pretty important.
Next two on my list, it gets to guys that I think people are going to believe I put way too low, and that's Jordan Hicks, Reynaldo Lopez. We always got to group these guys together because they're getting paid about the same per year. They're former high leverage relievers turned into starting pitchers this year. Jordan Hicks, 4 years, $44 million. Reynaldo Lopez checks in at 8 right after, or right before, well, after as you're reading, whatever. He's 8 at 3 years, $30 million. Hicks, 4 years, 44. They both have been great this year. Jordan Hicks got a 2.33 ERA, 58 innings. Lopez, 1.75 ERA, 51 and a third. The reason why these guys are lower on my list is there's risk in these contracts. Yes, for this season, they have provided more value at that number than a lot of guys. And you could say best two starting pitchers signed based on ERA, innings pitched, how much they're making per year. But I don't know if Jordan Hicks is going to be a starting pitcher for 4 years. I don't know if Lopez is going to be a starting pitcher for 3 years. So that's why I ultimately had them lower on this list, but still extremely valuable.
A lot of risk in Jordan Hicks throwing 100 miles an hour. We've seen what happens with those players getting Tommy John surgery. You have 3 more years of figuring that out. When a guy gets Tommy John, just basically wipe away two years right on top of that. And so we'll kind of wait and see what happens. And then with Lopez, I love that as him, in that group of those two together, of inching ahead, because look, where would Atlanta be right now without Reynaldo Lopez? That, for them in this situation, just a sneaky good signing where, hey, you know what? We might just continue with him as like a long man, a reliever. Maybe he'll be a setup man or he'll be a starter. We're not sure yet until we go to camp. And yet here is this guy who's like their number 6 on their depth chart, has been up there at 1-2 with Chris Sale. Incredibly valuable.
One of the things I mentioned in the article when it comes to the risk factor, the reason why I like the Lopez deal more is he actually has 2 years in his career where he crossed 180 innings pitched. He was a starter for full seasons in the big leagues, then got converted back to reliever, and now he's making the switch again. Jordan Hicks, it's an 8-start stint in the big leagues previously. So I just don't know how long he can keep this up. It's a great story if he can, though. So we'll see. Number 7 on the list, Jock Pederson. He's the best hitter on the Diamondbacks based on WRC plus, batting average, on-base percentage, slugging percentage. He's the strong side of the platoon at DH, making $9.5 million. That's the one thing that had him a little bit lower on this list than he could have been. Still a pretty decent salary. But, man, where will the Diamondbacks be without Jock Pederson in that lineup?
And I think he's a key player for them if they're going to make a run to the postseason again. That veteran experience, a guy who he's always a part of a winner. When you look at him, and I don't just mean physically, but if you think about Jock Pederson, there isn't anything about him that says this guy needs to win. He wants to win, like you maybe would obviously in the same way as Bryce Harper. But even someone like a Kyle Schwarber, like, no, those guys are so passionate about winning. You don't get that same sense for Jock Pederson, and yet he's always there. His teams are always in contention. So that kind of intangible value behind the scenes in the clubhouse is something that you can't even give him credit for. But what he has done on the field deserves a spot where you've got him on this list.
Sneaky strong career too. Close to 200 home runs. Not like we're talking Hall of Fame with Jock Pederson, but a guy that has been very consistent in producing power for teams. Like you said, great clubhouse guy as well. Number 6, Eric Fetty. So we're going to mention him. 2 years, $15 million. He's got a 2.8 ERA through 11 starts, 64 and a third innings pitched. The White Sox, they gave him that second year guaranteed. I think that's part of why he chose to sign there, was getting 2 years coming from the KBO where he won a Triple Crown. And now the White Sox, really hit, because at the deadline, they could say, hey, you want Eric Fetty to shore up your rotation this year and then get him for another year at $7.5 million? It's a pretty good value contract that it's not going to get a top 50 prospect in a system. But can you get a couple nice pieces for Eric Fetty at this deadline? Absolutely.
And if you want to wait until the offseason, because you're again trying to establish certain rapport with other general managers for Chris Getz. You say, well, I can't just take the best offer of the ones that are available. I said here, this is what I want. And if I don't get that, I'm going to be true to my word, right? I'm going to be a man of my word. And I'm not going to deal this player because you didn't meet my asking price. I'm going to play some hardball because it's going to benefit me in the future. You hold on until the off season. And then again, he has a 1-year deal. These players that come over from the KBO that have the, MLB pedigrees, like they figure something out. There's something there. We've seen it with Miles Michaelis in the past, and Fetty is definitely in that honeymoon period of, I believe that he's going to continue to shove and do incredibly well for the White Sox.
Man, I just thought of something. I wanted to work this into the article, or I don't even know how I could have worked it in, but just the thought of the KBO, that KBO, like what happens with these guys. And it's a really weird story to bring up. But when I was probably like in 5th grade, I had a next door neighbor who was like in 2nd grade, and he always wanted to play basketball with me in the driveway. And I would literally we played a 21. I'd give him 20 points and I would just wreck this kid. And, I'm stuffing every single shot that he puts up, blocking him. I swear in my like rec league basketball that year, I was way better at blocking shots because I got the timing down from blocking this short little kid. I kind of wonder if that's what happens with the KBO, that you're facing this competition where it's maybe a little easier to rack up the strikeouts. You figure some things out. You have a little more confidence in the zone because you're not going up against MLB competition, and you take that confidence with you and you bring it back stateside. I think it's the only time I'd ever be able to bring that story up on a podcast, but I thought it was worth mentioning.
I like that. Here, I actually thought the ending was going to be in that 2nd grader, Tyrese Halliburton. I really thought that's where you were going, but no, that's okay. It was still a good ending.
Yeah, I don't know where that kid ended up. I don't even remember his name, to be completely honest with you. But man, did I love blocking that kid's shot. Here we go. Here we get to a part of the list where I think people, when they're reading or listening, they might just tune me out and say you're an idiot. I got Cooper Criswell as number 5 on this list, above Jordan Hicks, above Reynaldo Lopez, and the reason being, and if for those of you who don't know, Cooper Criswell pitching for the Red Sox has a 3.96 ERA in 30 and 2/3 innings pitched. Hasn't been going deep into games, but he has been making starts for the Red Sox. To me, the value here is the fact that he was DFA'd from the Tampa Bay Rays. They had a 40-man roster crunch. He's one of those guys that was a casualty on their 40. And so the Red Sox signed him for $1 million. They have him for 5 years now, and he is proving, at least right now, to be a solid major league pitcher. 5 years of team control at dirt prices for a guy that's making starts for you. To me, that is real value, and that's why he's all the way up at number 5 on my list.
Yeah, there are sometimes teams that will see something in a player to give them that guaranteed deal when we've seen it in the past with some players that they're minor league free agents and then they get a major league deal because there's something there to that. And Boston hit on their guy. So yeah, might not have the same gaudy numbers as some of those other players, but was a free agent, did get guaranteed money despite the fact that he was designated for assignment, didn't have a ton of service time. But the Red Sox saw value there and they've absolutely gotten it.
For sure. And it's funny that you mentioned guaranteed because the next guy actually wasn't even a guaranteed contract. He was a minor league deal. Ben Lively signs a minor league deal with the Guardians. He has had a journey. Talk about a guy in the KBO. He spent 3 years there, 2019 through 2021, trying to make the transition back. Didn't go well. He was drafted by the Reds all the way back in 2013. Tried to latch on with them again last year. Numbers weren't great, ERA over 5, but this year signs a minor league deal with the Guardians. He has made 8 starts. He's sitting with a 2.8 ERA. And again, 5 years of control, and he's making the minimum. That's incredible value in my books. And I watched him pitch. I watched him make a start. Like, it looks sustainable. I don't think he's going to be pitching to a sub-3 all year, but can he have a 3.5 ERA this season? I think he absolutely can, and he could stick in this rotation for years. He's 32 years old. You're pretty much never going to have to pay him. Number 4 on my list, Ben Lively.
He's a classic Cleveland Guardian pickup where he just fits in there and he's the veteran on that status. There's some younger guys I think that might even have as much service time as him, but he's the elder statesman for that roster. So yeah, he's been nice to see that because he's just kicked around and he's a name that you just see in those transactions because I remember him as being such a big prospect when he was with the Phillies and even Cincinnati for a minute there. And just didn't work out in Kansas City and in Arizona, Cincinnati last year. But it's really kind of coming together. And he's left-handed, which it makes a little more sense when you go, oh, yeah, maybe he's just doing well for right now. Sometimes it takes left-handers a little while to
He's a
figure
right-hander.
things
I'm
out.
sorry.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
I thought he's been a left-hander his entire career. All right, you know what? This is a bad pick. You should have had Jeremiah Estrada on this list, Ryan.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I had to cut you off of that. I'm pretty sure I saw him throw with his right hand. I think he's kind of he's a guy
I've done that
like
his entire career. I've done that his entire career where I thought he was left-handed. Thank you.
I'm sure there's a Lively with the left hand out there, but it's not Ben.
You know
Let's
what? And to be fair, Jeremiah Estrada was selected off of waivers. So anyone that's probably saying, hey, why isn't he on this list? He was selected off waivers by the Padres from the Cubs.
There you go. Speaking of the Padres, Jurickson Profar. This is where we get into guys that I think might be all-stars this year. And Jurickson Profar, been the best player on the Padres, signed 1 year, $1 million for a team that was very worried about their payroll. And they got Profar playing at an unbelievable level, almost at 2.5 wins when it comes to wins above replacement so far. He's hitting 323, the 421 on base, and a 495 slug. You can make a case that for this season, nobody is on a more valuable contract than Jurickson Profar. The other guys, their contracts just extend beyond this year.
He might be known as Mr. Irrelevant, but in this conversation for best free agent deals this past offseason, he's number one. He's Mr. Relevant because him going back home to San Diego, a place where he was very comfortable, and he went there at the end of last year after the Rockies got rid of him. They just kind of cut bait and said, you know, we don't like what we're getting out of you. And they had a kind of a crowded outfield. and he's gone back to San Diego, and he's fit in perfectly with the rest of those shortstops playing out of position. So yeah, he's been really great for them, and been the one kind of constant, through these last couple of years, in addition to Machado and Tatis and what have you. But for Profar to be the third head on that three-headed monster, definitely wasn't what anybody expected.
Nobody saw it coming. And honestly, I think he's an all-star. I mean, we'd have to see exactly how it shakes out. I'd imagine like Dylan Cease probably grabs an all-star spot for the Padres, so that you always wonder, all right, so that's the one, that do you get another? But I'll tell you what, if he's hitting 320 by the all-star break, he deserves to be an all-star. And for a guy that I think he just hit 10 years of service time not that long ago, pretty cool that he has sort of found this with San Diego, because despite having 10 years of service time, 31 years old. So Jurickson Profar not going anywhere. And I imagine that he might even sign another sort of team-friendly discount. Not $1 million. I think he's going to get a little more than that next year. But it seems like for a guy that has gone around the league a little bit, home is San Diego. He's got to stay there.
Yeah, I would agree. He fits in with that group really well, and he's a good clubhouse presence.
Yeah.
He's a little bit on the quieter side, but he's got a big bright smile, and he definitely brings a lot of that camaraderie. There were like these basketball jerseys and shorts that the Padres have been wearing the last 3 years, and then as soon as he came over to the Rockies, he got some specialized purple and black ones made up for some of the players too. So a good guy to have around.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of a guy who's leading, Seth Lugo leading the Royals pitching staff. Said we were going to mention him earlier in the show. Here it is. I debated about 1 and 2 on the list. So let's just get to both of them. Seth Lugo or Shota Imanaga. Ultimately, I said Imanaga is number 1. Now, the reason I went there is because it's box office, it's jersey sales. There's just more that comes with Shota Imanaga as an ace. But if you were to just straight up say production, Seth Lugo has thrown 20 more innings than Shota Imanaga, and he's pitched, because Imanaga had the blow up start against the Brewers this week, where his ERA jumped a full run. He went from 0.84 to 1.86. Lugo's at 1.72. We mentioned the wins earlier. He's got 9 wins. He's potentially the front runner for the Cy Young, and he signed a 3-year, $45 million contract. I think if all 3 years were locked in, guaranteed, I might have gone Lugo. The third year, there was a player option. So I'm almost looking at this like 2 years, 30. But Seth Lugo, incredible value for the Royals so far.
And if you're talking contracts, Imanaga has 2 years guaranteed, and then 2 team option years followed up from that. So that can also serve as somewhat of a tiebreaker. Imanaga has a better track record over in Japan, as opposed to Lugo, who has somewhat of a relieving background, and a lot of that had more to do with not getting those opportunities when he was with the Mets, which was very frustrating for him at the time. So he's betting on himself. So Imanaga, a little bit younger, left-handed, so he's going to maybe age, I think, a little bit better than an older righty. So a lot of those things I think definitely tip the scale to Imanaga being that better value, because right now I think, right, isn't Imanaga like 22.5 for this 2-year stretch, and Lugo is 20 on the nose?
Lugo's 30, so Lugo's
Oh,
15 a
there
year.
you
So
go.
there you go. And I think when I looked at Imanaga's contract, it was complicated in structure, like you mentioned. So basically, to break it down, it's 23 million over the first 2 years. Pair of player options for 26 and 27 at 15 million. But before we get to the player options, there is a team option. So after 2025, if Imanaga keeps this up, he's the ace of the Cubs, they will have an ability to exercise a $57 million club option, in which it becomes a 5-year, $80 million deal, which at $18 million per for an ace is still great value. If they decline that, then it becomes a player option at $15 million. He can exercise that. And then the following year, again, it's the same set of triggers. And for that one, I don't know if I marked in the article, but it was like 4 years. It was or not 4. It was like 40 million. But the point is, the Cubs have the ability to make this a 5-year, $80 million contract. And to me, if this guy holds up, that right there is the best value that you're going to get, because you're going to have the rest of his prime at less than $20 million, and the starting pitchers are getting about that. Like we mentioned, Jack Flaherty, Luis Severino, 14, 13 million. This is really good value.
And I like what you just threw in there, this idea that the financial impact is it's all tied in with value. And is Shota Imanaga going to be selling more jerseys in Chicago, or Seth Lugo in Kansas City? And we know Imanaga is going to be that one, especially, he's in the mix for another award. So they're both battling for their league's respective Cy Young award, but Imanaga could be Rookie of the Year. So that's another plaque. That's another press release. That's just more positive publicity for him. And besides, he has an entire country, in the Far East that is going to be buying his jersey. Whereas Seth Lugo, I don't know where he's from, but I imagine there's not as many people from that general area as Shota Imanaga in Japan. So look, Shreveport, Louisiana, they love supporting their Seth Lugo, but Shreveport, Louisiana is no Japan. That's my hot take for the day,
Wow.
Ryan. That's my
Yeah,
hot
that's
take.
almost as hot of a take as Ben Lively throws left-handed. Um, I'll tell you, like, if you think about even just selling tickets, I mean, the fans that are in the know in Kansas City are like, I gotta go watch Seth Lugo pitch. But there's casuals in Chicago that want to check on Imanaga, and go into a Wrigley Day game with Imanaga. I'm sure you're seeing full crowd. So again, when it came to value, that's where I went to Imanaga.